Welcome on back, everybody, to the All Aussie Rules Footy podcast. This is episode 33, and this is our round 14 review. Round 14 has literally just wrapped up about 15-20 minutes ago, so we're straight into recording. Obviously, this won't be released until Monday, but let's, well, as always, we'll have a look at the latest news. We'll do our round 14 review, have a look at how my tips went for the weekend, and we'll jump almost straight into it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe as always. All the interactions help, so if you enjoy it, make sure you do it. All of that. Also, all of my socials are all Aussie Rules. We got Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, all of them. Tons of content on all of them, especially TikTok. Before we jump into anything else, busy week on the YouTube channel this week. Right now you're watching the round 14 review episode, which obviously is coming out Monday morning. Then Tuesday we jump into mid-season reviews. We start on Tuesday with Adelaide and Collingwood. Wednesday we have Hawthorn and Richmond mid-season reviews, and on Thursday we have St Kilda and Western Bulldogs. A reminder that the mid-season reviews only go out on the YouTube channel. Nowhere else do I put them out, so make sure you jump onto there. There's plenty of other teams. The other 12 teams have already had their mid-season reviews released on the YouTube channel. Some of them have got quite a lot of views, and I think there's quite good content in them. Especially the Gold Coast one, I was really happy with the information that was put out in that one. So go check them all out. And then, of course, on Friday, as always, the second podcast of the week will be released, which will be the round 15 preview episode. So they'll be out on Spotify and YouTube Friday morning. So plenty of content coming this week. So go check all of that out. But without any further ado, let's jump into how the weekend football went. We started off on Friday night. We had Brisbane hosting St Kilda. Brisbane were comfortable favourites going into this match, and overall, most of the way through, it kind of did result and look that way. Final score was Brisbane 19-12, 126. St Kilda 16-10, 106. So very high scoring game, very unusual for St Kilda. Not so unusual for Brisbane. Their scoring hasn't been as high this year due to their, inability to convert and be efficient going forward. They certainly create enough chances, Brisbane, this year, but they just haven't been efficient enough. But they have been this week, and they ended up getting the win. Funnily enough, St Kilda's second best offensive game of the year, also one of their worst defensive games, but they certainly looked a different St Kilda than went out and played last weekend. Brisbane, who typically dominate inside 50s, certainly didn't dominate them this week. As you can see on the stats before the game, they're +8 going into this game +8 per game, and they were only +3 this week, so probably didn't dominate that area as much as maybe we expected, but then they still managed to put the score on the board, so they'll be happy with that. They also had the highest disposal efficiency of any team in a match this year. They went at 82.3. I think the previous best for this year was 81%. So absolutely smashed it out of the water with their disposal efficiency, which just is a sign that maybe St Kilda didn't have the pressure all around the ground that was probably needed. 82.3 is a very high percentage for disposal efficiency. Funnily enough, they dominated clearances, St Kilda, 20-13. Both teams reasonably good in the clearance game. Brisbane overall typically slightly better, but St Kilda got the win in that. 20-13 in centre clearances for St Kilda, so there were a lot of centre clearances, there was a lot of goals kicked, but St Kilda did very well in that area of the game this week. However, they did allow Brisbane to dominate the uncontested football throughout the match, and that probably allowed some easy transition for Brisbane and didn't hurt them that much that they weren't winning clearances, because when they won the ball, they were getting it pretty easily, uncontested. Very low tackle count for both teams. Brisbane 35 and St Kilda 48. So St Kilda did lay more tackles than Brisbane, but it was both teams very low number. Obviously, Brisbane were 23 below their average tackle count, and I think this was their lowest tackle count of the year. And St Kilda, it wasn't quite their lowest tackle count, but still minus 12 on their average. So both teams were really low on the tackle count. Overall, Brisbane probably deserved the win. They looked overall the better team. St Kilda gave them a good run though. They got within 7 points in that last quarter, and it looked like maybe they were a chance, but Brisbane settled and kicked last two to win by 20 points, as they were probably expected to win this one. Few outstanding performances from players. Jack Higgins kicked 5 for St Kilda, which was a great return for him. 5 goals is always a good effort from a small forward. Joe Danaher kicked 5, which I think is his first 5-goal haul of the year. He's obviously been a bit down on performance most of the way through the year. He's still been reasonably good, but just hasn't had any outstanding games. This was a very good one with 5. A sign of why Brisbane dominated uncontested footy, they had 8 different players that had 9 marks or more, which no St Kilda had any. So that's just a massive difference right there. Zorko was probably best on ground. He had 30 disposals, 13 intercepts, 9 score involvements, and 755 metres gained. So he was fantastic throughout the whole match. Probably best on ground in my opinion. That was Friday night footy. We jump into Saturday afternoon footy. This was the Bulldogs hosting Fremantle at Marvel Stadium. Another high scoring game. 2 from 2 to start the week. Didn't quite go as I thought it would. Thought Fremantle would have given a little bit more than they did, but in the end, Bulldogs won it comfortably. 23 goals 11, 149 to 12 goals 10, 82. And in the end, it was pretty close in the first quarter, but after that, the Bulldogs just kind of controlled everything. Fremantle still scored 82, which is right on their average score, but they typically concede 67.5 points a game, and they conceded 149. So their defence certainly wasn't on today, or on the weekend even. And they kind of got shown in that regard. Inside 50 count, Bulldogs were plus 14, so that's a huge discrepancy. Both teams are pretty good at it. Bulldogs are slightly better on the overall for the season, but the Bulldogs won at plus 14, and when you win the inside 50 count plus 14, it's usually a good start at least. I think the major area where this game was probably won and lost was the clearance game. Even though Fremantle did win the clearances by 4, you almost expect them to win it by more. As you can see on the graphic, going into the game, they averaged 9 clearances more than their opposition a game. Bulldogs are plus 2 per game, but Fremantle, by far and away, coming into this weekend, were the best clearance team in the game, and they still will be, but to only win it by 4 meant that they probably didn't quite get the numbers going forward as first use of it as they usually do, and that possibly played into the result, I think, in my opinion. Interestingly enough, this was Freo's worst performance in terms of uncontested footy for the year. They were quite well and truly dominated in that area throughout the match. Bulldogs just had the uncontested footy all day, and that kind of was another factor for the match. Just getting the uncontested numbers up. So it was 238 uncontested possessions for the Bulldogs to 169 for Freo. So terrible result, and it was Freo's worst result this year in uncontested footy. So I don't think they can blame it being in Melbourne. They were 3-0 in Melbourne this year. Coming off the bye is always a difficult one for teams, but they certainly didn't show up in this one. Bulldogs won the turnover game. not massively, but by 9. So it gives them extra chances there. Didn't turn it over too much to the Doggies. And that's 8 out of 10 weeks the Bulldogs have won the turnover game. So they're really defending well and not turning it over on the rebound, which is beneficial for them. Obviously, it's beneficial for anyone if they were doing that. But I think their worst performance of the year was against Essendon, and that's where they really struggled in that regard. They got their season high marks inside 50 as well, the Bulldogs. They were really good. They had 17 marks inside 50. So 17 marks inside 50 is a pretty decent number. It's their best of the year, as I said, and that just gives you good opportunities at scoring, because typically if you mark it inside 50, you're going to get a shot out of it almost all the time. So very much plenty of positives there. Plenty of good players on the ground, but we're just going to highlight one here, which was Bontempelli. Showed that he is the standout player in the competition over the last couple of years, and this performance was certainly one of the staples of that. I mean, he does it regularly, but he had 30 disposals, 3 goals, 3 goal assists, 15 scoring involvements, and 5 centre clearances against a Fremantle clearance machine team. So a really, really good performance from Bontempelli on Saturday. So the Doggies go into the bye. Sorry about that. The Doggies go into the bye with an okay record. They're now 7-7. A chance to springboard into the second year, hopefully, for them. Dockers, they come off the bye with a loss. They go back home next week. Their record is still okay. They're 7 wins and a draw from 13 games. So it's a solid record for them. They're still above the Bulldogs, having played one less game than them. So it's no panic stations for the Dockers just yet. After that one, we had the Saturday afternoon game at the MCG. This was Dusty's 300th, and boy oh boy did the Richmond faithful get out and in full force to watch this one. Great effort from the Richmond faithful and the Hawthorn fans and any neutrals that went. 92,000 people to this game for a 12th versus 17th on the ladder matchup is a fantastic effort. So well done to everyone that went to show appreciation for Dusty. In the end, the scoreline was Richmond 6 goals, 13-49 to Hawthorn's 14-13, 97. Not much to write home about for Richmond other than the fact that it was a great celebration for Dusty. It looked like it was going to be a great day for him when he burst through the pack and kicked a goal from 50 to open the scoring. First goal of the match was huge effort, and the roar was amazing at that point. From that point onwards, it wasn't much excitement for the Tigers. They comprehensively got beaten in the end. Never really looked in it after really quarter time. They were only 12 points down at quarter time, but from then it just kind of, it didn't go real bad for them, but just consistent goals for Hawthorn, and they really struggled to put goals on the board, especially in the second half. They only managed 2, did the Tigers. Hawthorn's form is incredible. They've now won 7 of their last 9 games. They haven't quite made it to the 8 yet, but they're certainly pushing in the right direction. Could well be 8 out of 9 wins if they hadn't have thrown that one away against Port Adelaide in Adelaide when they were like 7 goals up and then let Port Adelaide back in it and then conceded 2 goals in the last minute to lose the game. So if they had have won that one, their season would be incredible. They would have won 8 of the last 9 and I think 7 in a row if they had have won that. So fantastic effort from them either way. But yeah, what could have been if they had have got that one? Looking at some of their stats in this game, as we kind of expected, looking at the inside 50s for both teams, Hawthorn are pretty good at it, and they showed that this week. They were plus 12. Richmond are very average at inside 50s. So that went about as expected. Clearances were only +1 for Hawthorn overall, but the centre clearances were +7. So Hawthorn out of the centre were really, really good. The stoppage clearances, Richmond were better than Hawthorn, but overall it was pretty even in that regard. The turnover game, as kind of would be expected with Hawthorn being ranked 5th in the league, and probably their best stat is the turnover game, and they did certainly dominate the turnover game in this one by +11. So yeah, it's always an issue for Richmond and Hawthorn. It is probably their strongest point of their game, so they showed that on the weekend, which was really good. Just a couple mentions of players. Sicily was basically left to his own devices. He had 33 touches, 881 metres gained, which I think is the most amount of metres gained by anyone on the weekend, and 10 intercepts. So a really good performance from him, but maybe needed to put a little bit more pressure on him. And Charles for Hawthorn kicked 4 goals, which was a good return from him. Where does that leave these two teams? They both go into the bye this weekend. Obviously, Richmond 2-11, sitting second bottom on the ladder. I don't think we expect too much from them in the second half of the year. I think they'll be hoping to get at least a couple wins, but wouldn't expect too much. Hawthorn, they go full of momentum into the break. They get a week off and then return with some big games and important games to keep their season going in the right direction. On current form, there's no reason they can't make the finals. I'll be recording their mid-season video over the next couple of days, so check that out on the YouTube channel when it comes out. We'll have a full deep dive into everything Hawthorn and see exactly what it does mean for them, whether they can make finals. We will look into it. Game number 4 of the weekend was Saturday night over in Adelaide. We had Adelaide hosting Sydney. Top of the ladder versus 15th on the ladder. Sydney on top of the ladder isn't that much of a surprise. Adelaide 15th on the ladder surprised me for sure. I thought they were going to be a lot better than this year, but they certainly haven't shown that just yet. And this game was a weird one. Adelaide really started well, which a lot of teams are kind of doing against Sydney, if we're being honest, over the last 6 or so weeks. Sydney don't dominate early game. In fact, this is 5 out of 6 first quarters now that they've lost. I don't think it's a major concern for Sydney because they absolutely come home with a wet sail. They dominate third quarters, they dominate fourth quarters, dominate second half. So it's not a concern, I don't think, but it is certainly a trend that they have lost 5 out of 6 first quarters. Adelaide kept it going. Half-time they were still leading. Third quarter they were really looking okay until just a bit of dominance from Sydney in all facets of the game. But from the 19-minute mark in the third quarter, when Adelaide were 16 points up, from that point onwards, Sydney kicked 10-5-65 to Adelaide's 1-1-7. So that's a 58-point turnaround and just an absolute domination in less than a quarter and a half. Incredible turnaround from Sydney there. Showed why they are the best team in the league and why they're going to be so hard for anybody to catch them on current form. Pretty much a domination in most stats, really, for Sydney this one. Sydney kicked 10-5. Oh, sorry. We've already gone through that. Inside 50s were 61 to 35, so plus 26 for Adelaide, which is Sydney's best return of the year and not far from the best inside 50 differential for any team this year. Clearances, Sydney were plus 21, which was their best of the year as well. They were plus 15 in centre clearances, which was the best of anybody in any team in the league this year. Plus 15 centre clearances in a match. I think it beats Carlton's game in like round 6 or 7 against GWS maybe. Don't hold me to that because it could be the wrong game. But plus 15 is the biggest differential in centre clearances this year so far. So they just dominated. And just to show that why that is such a massive out-of-the-box performance, Sydney's best up until this point in a match in centre clearances was plus 4. So to go plus 15 is absolutely huge. Yeah, they're the better clearance team out of these two, but still, plus 15 in centre clearances is massive. They also won contested footy plus 36, which is also a massive win. 2 weeks in a row they've dominated contested footy, and it's not an area of the game that they really dominate that much coming into this one. So just massive performance from them to show something different than what they usually do. Highlights, player highlights, I guess, from this game. You can just mention just about any Sydney player. Amati kicked 9 goals. Fantastic return from him. I'll put my hand up. I'm one of the ones that perhaps didn't think he was capable of that. I've said a few times that a big bag from him was not something I really saw happening, but he came out and he did it. He kicked, I think, 4 goals in the second quarter and 4 goals in the third quarter, and just a massive effort from him. So well done to him. Grundy was huge. 31 disposals, 24 contested, 49 hit-outs. Just a massive game. Goulden, 35 disposals with 12 inside 50s. And Roadbottom was the workhorse in the centre clearances. He got 8 centre clearances, which is a major reason for their domination in that area. Who gets the votes in this game could go any way of 6 players really for Sydney. Those 4 that I mentioned, as well as Isaac Heaney, was really good. So you almost have to give it to Amati for 9 goals, don't you? Grundy, huge. Goulden, great. But Brownlow votes could go to any one of those 6, I reckon, in my opinion. Sorry, my throat is killing me. But we push on to game number 5 of the weekend. This was only earlier today for me. Obviously yesterday if you're watching this on Monday when it comes out. But North Melbourne Collingwood at Marvel Stadium. And what an absolute cracker out of nowhere this one was. North coming off the win the week before against West Coast. Against Collingwood, who season has sort of certainly progressed upwards since where it was after being 0-3 at the start of the year. But what transpired on Sunday was something that I don't think anyone really predicted. North end up losing it 19-4, 118 to Collingwood 18-11, 119. So a 1-point victory to the Pies. But at one point, North led by 54 points, which is a massive lead. One of the biggest comebacks you'll ever see, really. I think I saw a stat saying 3rd biggest comeback of this century. Just a huge comeback. But yeah, at the end of the day, North Melbourne were the better team throughout the day. They just couldn't finish it off in the end. North were plus 68 in disposals, which both last week when they won and this week they've dominated disposals. But I think the major factor in this game was the pressure. North's pressure in that first half was elite, which they did for 3 quarters against West Coast last week. And they did for maybe 2.5 quarters this week. But young side, you can kind of forgive them. The amount of pressure they were bringing probably wasn't sustainable for a full game. And in the end, if you let Collingwood loose for even a quarter, they're going to make you pay. North won the inside 50 count for the match, plus 3, which you wouldn't have predicted going in. Collingwood are not great at inside 50 differential, but North Melbourne are typically minus 17, so that's a great return from them. Only the second time North has won the inside 50 count this year, And I think the last time was at Marvel as well against Fremantle in round 2. So, yeah, great performance from them in that regard. North's forward efficiency and accuracy was huge. They were obviously, they're not the best at forward efficiency in the league. In fact, they ranked 16th, but their accuracy is always very good, and that continued here. 19 goals for. Unfortunately for them, that last one was a behind, a snap over the shoulder with 5 seconds to go. Could have won it for them, but didn't quite go through. North won the clearances +2, +4 in the centre clearances, so another area where they're not great. Collingwood aren't great at either, but they won it, so that's a fantastic performance from them in that regard. I think the area where Collingwood kind of won this game, though, in the end, in that last quarter especially, was the turnover game. They were +8 throughout the match in the turnover game, plus lots of goals. I think 6 out of their last 8 goals were from turnover for Collingwood, so it's kind of where they catch a lot of teams, is they look after the ball really well, and then when they get the turnover, they look to run it really quick, and usually through the middle, and that kind of just works out really well for Collingwood and their smaller forward line. Although they did have some big bodies up there today, obviously. Kruger was up there. Frampton started forward, but he was swung back, and Howe moved forward in that last quarter, which really gave him a leading forward opportunity there. Looking at best players, we'll start with Collingwood. Nick Dacos was well held in the first half. His second half, he certainly got off the leash a little bit, and that last quarter was outstanding. He ended the game with 29 disposals, 18 of those contested, 2 goals, 3 goal assists, and 10 score involvements. And a lot of that was in that last quarter. He was absolutely huge. Bobby Hill, what is that guy? He kicked 5 goals, 3 of them in the last quarter, and potentially mark of the year. Go check it out and let me know what you think in the comments below. Is it better than Jamie Elliott's? On first look, I thought it might have been. Still not convinced either way, but wowee, absolute ride. He just sat up there, looked calm, and then just landed on his feet. It was insane. Really good from him. Schultz kicked 4 goals. He was good. Could have kicked 5. He missed probably the easiest opportunity he had of the day. Nick Larkey for North Melbourne. He kicked 4 goals. I'm pretty sure all 4 of them were in the first quarter. He kind of went a little bit missing after that. Wardlaw and Luke Davies-Yanaki were outstanding for North Melbourne. Their first 3 quarters were insane. They weren't as big in the last quarter, but they had put in so much work that you kind of forgive them for kind of running out of legs there in that last quarter. What this means for both teams, obviously North, they won an 11. I don't think anybody would be too disappointed. Obviously a win would have been great for them, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. They've already had their bye, so they just continue battling along. If they can get another couple wins, if they play like that, now that they know to bring that pressure, that's where their game kind of lacked up until the last couple of weeks, was just bringing pressure. And they're probably still going to lose more than they win, obviously, but I think it's just a good way to build their season and their future for their players. Bring that pressure, and you force teams into mistakes, and you never know what will happen with that. And the more they do it, the fitter they'll get, the stronger they'll get, and you never know. They might keep upsetting some bigger teams. Collingwood, they go into the bye. They've got 8 wins going into the bye, which if you had have offered them after round 3 when they were 0-3 to be 8 wins and 2 draws at the bye, they probably would have taken it, because they've only lost 1 game since like the end of March. So fantastic turnaround from them. They'll go into the bye, hopefully for their sakes recoup, be ready to come out, ready to push in the second half of the year, because that, like, all the way from second down to like 12th, 13th is very open for anybody to move around in at the moment. So anyone sitting second on the ladder, you're not safe to make finals. and people sitting in 13th are not ruled out of finals. So it's going to be an very interesting second half of the season. It's going to be about making sure you take your opportunities to win matches. And in the end, Collingwood did that today, so they'll be happy in that regard, even if it wasn't their best performance of the season. Final game of round 14 was just finished up in Sydney. GWS hosting Port Adelaide. 4th and 8th on the ladder coming into this week. 8th obviously were GWS, and their form was not great. 1-4 over the last 5 weeks, whereas Port Adelaide's form had been better. They did lose their last match against Carlton at home right before their bye, so I don't know. Neither team going perfect, but nonetheless, Port Adelaide's form over the last 5 weeks, especially, had been better than GWS's. But that's not what happened here. Final score was 9-19-73 for GWS, 6-15-51 for Port Adelaide, and it was just missed shots for both teams, really. Plenty of opportunities created. Could have been another high-scoring game. There was a high-scoring round outside of this one. But 9-19 for GWS is not great kicking, but you get away with it when the other team kicks 6 goals 15. First quarter, especially for GWS, kicked 0-6 in the first quarter. They kind of turned it around, at least kicking some goals after that. But yeah, not the return in front of goals that you'd hope for both teams, but they certainly were creating a lot of opportunities, getting the ball forward plenty, and just wasting it at that final hurdle. Inside 50 count was plus 14 for GWS, which is the first time since round 7 that they've won the inside 50 count. So that's like 2 months almost. Not quite 2 months, but close enough too, since they had won inside 50s, and that was round 7 against Brisbane. So to win it by 14 is a great performance from them, and maybe a sign that they've turning that around in the second half of the year. They're obviously coming off the bye, and maybe... Oh, no, they had the bye the week before, but you know what I mean. Like, maybe they've reassessed their season and pushing towards that being a cornerstone of the second half of the year, to focus a little bit more on getting the ball forward, because they've struggled with that of recent. Centre clearances, Port Adelaide won 10-6, but then stoppage clearances, GWS won 28-23. So nothing too outstanding in the clearance game, which probably favoured GWS, seeing Port Adelaide typically are the better team in the clearance game. But who knows? Contested possession, GWS were plus 18. So good performance there from GWS. Port Adelaide, a little bit concerning with the contested possession game at the moment for them. It's 4 of their last 5 matches they've lost the contested count. While it's not the be-all and end-all of a game of football, it certainly is an important factor. And over the last five games, Port Adelaide certainly have not been showing their best in that regard. The turnover game, which I think I highlighted going into this week, both teams kind of struggle at looking after the ball and winning the ball off the opposition, but GWS dominated this one, plus 11, which the first part of the season they were pretty good at, and this is another stat category that they hadn't won in a long time. Last time they won the turnover game was round 8 against Sydney, so long time between drinks for them in that regard. So it tells you that GWS certainly bought their best, and highlighted maybe some factors that they needed to work on, and for their sake they'll be hoping that they can continue showing that over the next month or two, and really push to cement themselves in the top 8, if not the top 4. Best player, Sam Taylor had 11 intercepts. He was great. nothing too outstanding from anyone really. Toby Green could have had an absolute day out. He kicked 1 goal 5, but in the end, wasted opportunities like a lot of players. What's this mean for both teams? Obviously, Port coming off the bye, not their best performance. It can happen. Teams coming off the bye sometimes do struggle. Last year it was a big issue. I don't think it's been so big or so noticeable this year, but we give them the forgive on this one, I think, for that. GWS obviously lost to Hawthorn down in Tassie last week, but they've bounced back here and at least have shown some signs. They'll obviously want to kick a lot straighter than that, but 28 shots and kick 15-13 in that instead of 9 goals 19. You crack 100 and the game looks pretty decent from them. So it is what it is, but they'll move on. They're certainly not done with yet, even though their last maybe 6 or 7 weeks have not been fantastic. We'll now just quickly look at how my tips went this weekend. I went a couple upsets and I did not get them. So Brisbane against St Kilda, the favourite, won that one. We got that one right. Margin was 20, so we're only 6 off there. Not too bad. Saturday, Bulldogs Freo. We went the upset with Freo and we didn't get it. Bulldogs got the win comfortably in the end, so we're a decent way off on that one. We got Hawthorn right to beat Richmond. Margin was a little bit bigger than that, but not too bad. Once again, Sydney were favourites. We got that one right. Margin, not too bad, but Sydney did walk away with it there in the last quarter. Collingwood did not win by 24 points, but they did win by 1, so we get that one right. And then we went Port Adelaide to cause another upset, and that didn't happen either. So we got 4 out of 6. Not the worst week. We went a couple upsets, didn't get them, but that's footy tipping, I guess. So yeah, that's everything for this round 14 review podcast episode. Thanks for tuning in. As always, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Check me out on all my socials. And as I mentioned at the start of the video, plenty of content coming out this week. We've got 6 more mid-season reviews. There's already 12 up on the channel, so go check them out. Check your favourite team out. Check all the teams out if you want. I appreciate you for tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next one.